Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to If Naruto Had the Two Tails Part 1. And since there's nothing to say, let's jump into the video in 3, 2, 1. So we begin this what if before the actual series, when Hashirama was spreading out the tailed beast. And in this, instead of the hidden cloud getting the two tails, it swapped, so they get the 9 tails instead, while the hidden leaf gets the 2 tails. And in this, the 2 tails worked well with the Jinchurikis, and the tailed beast allowed them to use their power. But on the night of Naruto's birth, Kushina lost control of the 2 tails, who was forced out of her. And when the tailed beast got released, it got placed under a genjutsu, which made it lose control, so it destroyed a good portion of the village. And by the end of the night, the 2 tails got suppressed into the newly born Naruto. But in exchange, Minato and Kushina died. So now we skip to when Naruto was around 5 years old, and while Naruto was sleeping, he found himself in a giant dungeon. And seeing this, he began to shout, asking if anyone was there, and he walked around to see if he could find an exit. And eventually he comes across a cage with something actually in it, which appeared to be a giant blue flame, so he asked the creature if he knew where he was. And to Naruto's surprise, the creature actually talked, and it told him that he was currently in the mindscape. Naruto then asked what the creature was, and the giant flame told him that he was the 2 tails. And hearing this, Naruto asked why there was a giant flaming cat in his mind. And in response, the 2 tails tells Naruto about the attack when he was born. And at the end of the story, the 2 tails tells him that the reason the village hates him so much is because he is residing in him. And hearing all of this, Naruto got mad, since he did nothing wrong, and it's just because of this that everyone else hates him. But after a couple of minutes, Naruto calms down and he smiles at the creature, and he asks if it would be his friend. And hearing this, the tailed beast was confused, since it was the reason the village treated him like dirt, and it asked why. And in response, Naruto tells it that the village already hates him, and even if he would hate the creature, then nothing would change. So they should work together to become stronger, and maybe they'll be able to get the respect of everyone in the village. And hearing this, the 2 tails smiled, and it tells Naruto that it will be his partner. And before the actual series, Naruto is solely focused on being able to use the 2 tails' abilities. So Naruto has become more adept at using fire nature ninjutsu, with him most being skilled at the mouse hairball, and his second being the fireball jutsu. So now we skip to the start of the series, and since he's only focused on these 2 things, he isn't really good at anything else. So Naruto failed the graduation exams, since he couldn't do the clone jutsu. And when he found out he failed, he sat on top of the roof of the school until it was sunset. And when Mizuki noticed him, he walked over to him, and he told him that there was actually another way for him to become a Genin, which was if he could learn a jutsu from a forbidden scroll, then he would automatically become a Genin. And hearing this, Naruto gets excited, and he asks Mizuki where he can find the scroll. And when Naruto got all the information he needed, like where it was and the place to go afterward to train, he ran off, and he began to run to the location. And after around half an hour, Naruto was able to get the scroll, and he went to Mizuki's house to train. And when the leaf noticed that Naruto took the scroll, they sent out Shinobi to find him. And after an hour, Iruka found him on the ground tired and dirty. And when Naruto saw Iruka, he quickly got back to his feet, and he told him he did it. And confused about what Naruto was talking about, he asked Naruto why did he take the scroll. And in response, Naruto tells him Mizuki told him that if he was able to learn one jutsu from the scroll, then he would become a Genin. But before Iruka could say anything, a giant shuriken flew at Naruto. But before it hit, Iruka jumped in front of Naruto and he took the shuriken to the back. Then the 2 look at where the shuriken came from, and when they do, they see Mizuki, who then tells Naruto to give up the scroll. And hearing this, Iruka shouts for Naruto not to listen to him, and he tells him that he's lying. But hearing this, Mizuki shouts that he's not the only one in Naruto's life to keep a secret from him. He then shouts that the 2-tailed creature that destroyed the village years ago was sealed within him. And hearing this, Naruto just nods his head and he tells him he already knows. And he tells him that Matatabi isn't really that bad once you get to know them. And hearing this, Mizuki shouts that that's even more of a reason for him to kill him, if he's talking to the creature that destroyed the village. Mizuki then ran at Naruto, and seeing this, Naruto told Iruka to stand back. Then Naruto used the new jutsu he just learned, which was the Shadow Clone Jutsu. So Naruto made around 200 Shadow Clones. And when they were ready, they all fired mouse hairballs at Mizuki, which he was able to dodge at first. But after he got hit once, he slowed down, which made him get hit more. And after the assault, Mizuki was all burned up, with his whole body covered in burns, and he was too injured to actually move. And seeing this, Naruto undid all the clones, and he hit Mizuki in the face, knocking him out. And by this point, it was around sunrise. And it was then that Iruka gave Naruto his headband, and he told Naruto that he was now officially a Genin. So now we skip a couple of days, so now it's time for the Genin to be put into teams. And all the teams will be the exact same as in the canon. And all the same things will happen between the 3 members of Team 7. So now we skip to when Kakashi asks the 3 what their goals are. And Sasuke and Sakura's wants will be the exact same as in the canon. But Naruto's is a bit different, because not only does he say he wants to be the Hokage, he also tells Kakashi that he wants to get Matatabi's respect back. And because Sasuke and Sakura didn't know the 2 tails' name, they didn't know who Naruto was talking about, but Kakashi on the other hand did. So he knew that it would be a good idea to keep an eye on Naruto, since if he goes out of control, he could destroy the village. And shortly after the introduction, Kakashi tells them that they're done for the day. He then tells them that they will have their next meetup the next day. So now we skip to the next day, and by the time Kakashi got to the meeting place, he was a couple of hours late. And he tells them that they will do a test, which if they fail, fail, they will be sent back to the academy. He then explained the bell test to the Genin, and when he talked about how the bells decide who gets sent back to the academy, Sakura pointed out that there were only 2 bells, and Kakashi in response told him that at least one person will be sent back. And when he was done explaining, Kakashi began to count down, and when he began to count, Sasuke and Sakura jumped away to find a place to hide, while Naruto stayed where he was. And when Kakashi got to 0, Naruto ran at him, but he was easily stopped when he got kicked in the gut, which flung him a couple of feet away. And when he got up, he made around 20 Shadow clones, and they all fired out mouse hairballs at Kakashi, but he was able to avoid them all, and he was able to attack the clones while he was avoiding them. And after a minute, he was able to make it so only the original was left. Then Kakashi was able to get behind Naruto, and he used 1,000 years of death on him, launching him into a nearby lake. But shortly after Naruto lands, Naruto gets back up, and when he reaches the surface of the water, around 20 Narutos came out of the water, and they all ran at Kakashi again. But this time, while Kakashi was distracted, one of them was able to get behind him, and they grabbed him in a way so Kakashi couldn't move. And when the Narutos made it to Kakashi, one of them punched him in the face, but right before he got hit, Kakashi replaced himself for a Naruto, making it so Naruto hit Naruto. And thinking that it was a transformation, all the Narutos began to attack each other, until eventually Naruto undid the jutsu, making it so only the original took all the damage. Then Naruto began to look around for Kakashi, but while he was looking, he noticed a silver bell on the ground under a tree, so he ran to it and picked it up. But when he squatted down to pick it up, a rope caught onto his ankle, and it picked him up, and it flipped him upside down, while holding him by his leg. Then Kakashi walked over to him, and he takes the bell. He then tells Naruto not to fall for such obvious traps. And seeing this all go down, Sasuke throws multiple kunai shurikens and they all land. But what they hit is a log, because Kakashi did a substitution. And knowing that Kakashi now knows his location, Sasuke began to run out of his current spot to find a new one. But after a bit of running, Kakashi was able to catch up. And after some fighting, Kakashi was able to pull Sasuke into the ground, so only his head was visible. So now we jump back a bit, to when Sasuke threw his weapons. And seeing them all fail, Sakura could tell that he had to go to a different spot, and that Kakashi would hunt him down. So she began to run to look for Sasuke. But Kakashi found her first, and he put her into a genjutsu, which instantly knocked her out. So now it's the present, and when Sakura woke up, she began to look for Sasuke again, and after a couple of minutes, she finds him, but what she sees is Sasuke's decapitated head, and from fear she passed out again. And shortly after that, the test was over, because time was up. So all the Genin are now where the test started, and Naruto is tied to a stump, since when he got down from the tree, he tried to eat his lunch, but he got caught. And when Kakashi got to the starting point, he told them that they won't be sent back to the academy, like they were told, but now, they will be dropped from the program entirely, since they missed one of the most important things about being a shinobi, which was working together. Because during the test, none of them thought of helping anyone but themselves, but Kakashi tells them that he will give them one more chance, but one rule is that they can't feed Naruto or they automatically fail. But the second Kakashi went out of view, Sakura and Sasuke decided to feed Naruto, but the second that Naruto ate the food, gray smoke filled the area around them, and in that smoke was Kakashi, who told them they all passed, because they cared more about their teammate than the rules, and that they are now officially Team 7. So now we skip a couple of days, and by this point Team 7 has gone on multiple missions. But after they went on a mission to find a woman's cat, Naruto wanted more, so when they were getting another mission, Naruto began to say that they should go on higher ranked missions, because they were wasting their talents on simple chores. And eventually the third Hokage caves in, and he gives Team 7 a C-ranked mission, which was to escort a bridge builder named Hazuna back to his home in the Land of Waves. And after some talking, Kakashi told everyone that they will be going on the mission the next morning, which everyone agreed to. So now we skip to the next day, and it's been hours since the start of the trip, and the group was currently walking down a path. And while they were walking, Kakashi noticed that there were puddles ahead of them, which was weird to him, because the ground below them and everything in the area was dry, and even the sky was clear, so he assumes that there is enemies ahead of them, so he puts his guard up. And right before the group walked, 2 tuning level shinobi jump out of the puddles, and the second they were fully formed, they threw kunai with chains attached to them at Kakashi, which tied him up. Then the 2 go to attack Naruto, and seeing this, Naruto wanted to react, but when he tried to move, he got scared and he couldn't move. But right before the 2 were able to hit him, Sasuke jumped in front of them and he began to fight them. And while this was going on, Sakura ran to Tazuna to protect him, and after a couple of minutes, Sasuke was still fighting the 2, and before the fight could end, Kakashi appeared behind the 2 and he knocked them out. And shortly afterward, they tied them up, and when they were done with that, Kakashi began to talk to Tazuna about how the mission was mislabeled, and how if he didn't tell him the truth, they would stop the mission. But Naruto wasn't listening to this, but instead he was mad at himself about how he got scared at the last second. And eventually, after some time, he grabbed a kunai and he stabbed himself in the hand, and he made a promise to himself to never back down again. And shortly after they covered up the wound Naruto just made, the group continued on. So now we skip a couple of hours and the group finally makes it to a dock, and after riding on a boat for an hour, they make it to land, and when they landed, they continued the walk. And after a bit of time, Kakashi warns everyone to get down, and right after they did, a giant sword falls from the trees above, and it lands right in front of them. And when they look to see where the sword came from, they see Zabuza in a tree. And seeing and recognizing Zabuza, Kakashi uncovers the Sharingan, which in return makes Zabuza recognize him. Then Zabuza started to surround the area in a thick mist, and when he was done, the 2 started to fight. And while they were fighting, the rest of Team 7 was surrounding the bridge builder, making sure he was safe. And eventually, Kakashi gets trapped in a sphere of water, and he was slowly drowning. And while this was going on, Zabuza made a water clone, which was now walking towards the group of Genin and Tazuna. And seeing the clone walk towards them, Naruto made around 6 clones, and when they were formed, they ran at the clone Zabuza, but they got easily destroyed with a couple of slashes with his sword. And seeing that they couldn't win, Naruto made around 50 clones, and they all ran at the clone again. But this time, while Zabuza was distracted, Naruto gave Sasuke a Fuma Shuriken, and when Sasuke had it, he threw it at the real Zabuza, who was able to grab the Shuriken, and at the last second he was able to jump over the secret second one that was actually under the first one. But the second one was actually the real Naruto, and when he was behind Zabuza, he turned back to normal, and he fired a mouse hairball at Zabuza's back, which forced Zabuza to undo the jutsu, since he had to have contact with the water sphere, and if he didn't let go, he would have been hit in the back. So Kakashi is now free, and when Kakashi was able to get his breath back, he told Naruto to go back to the group while he fought, and hearing this, Naruto nodded and he walked back to the group. And since he was fighting again, Zabuza undid the water clone, and the two then went back to fighting, and eventually Kakashi was able to get the upper hand, and he was about to deliver the final blow to Zabuza, but before he could land the attack, a needle came from one of the trees above and it hit Zabuza in the neck, and the second it hit Zabuza, Zabuza fell to the ground. And seeing this, Kakashi went to check Zabuza's pulse, and when he went to check, he couldn't feel anything, meaning that he was dead. Kakashi then looked to where the needle came from, and when he does, he sees a masked shinobi, who tells the group that he was assigned to kill Zabuza, and after a bit of talking, the masked shinobi takes Zabuza's body and leaves. And a couple of minutes later, Kakashi gets knocked out from overusing his Sharingan, and seeing this, Naruto made multiple clones, and carried him to Tazuna's house to rest. And this is where I'm going to leave the what if. I hope you enjoy this new series moving forward, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.